Welcome to our ARC safety equipment video. My name is Jeremy Wyatt from World Cruising Club, and hopefully in this session today we're going to explain what's required for the ARC safety equipment. It's a big topic, so we've broken it up into several chapters. In part one, we're going to explain what's involved in a safety check, where the requirements are located so that you can access the information. And then we're going to start the process of our safety check by looking at some of the equipment that you commonly expect to find on deck on your yacht. Helping me today is Roger Seymour, who's a senior instructor at Hamble School of Yachting. Roger, what gives you the experience to be talking to us today about safety equipment?
Well, I'm probably very fortunate to have a unique perspective, having been involved in many safety checks as a delivery skipper and a participant in the ARC. I've done many yacht deliveries, training, racing over many years. I've visited many glamorous destinations, including Asia and the Caribbean, but I always manage to find time to look at the smaller creeks and harbours because I have a passion for cruising.
I know in your day job, you're a senior instructor, so you actually teach people to sail, don't you?
Yes, I do teach people to sail, and I teach them both from novices right up to instructor level.
So you actually teach the instructors how to teach?
Some of them, yes, or they teach me how to sail as well.
How many years have you been on the safety team in Las Palmas for the ARC?
As part of the safety team in Las Palmas, this will be my 5th year, and each year is very different and exciting.
The ARC safety equipment requirements are a detailed list that we provide to participants taking part in our rallies. They're also available in the pre-event information. It's very important that you read through the list, which is also available in French, German, and Spanish. Make sure that you understand the equipment and that your boat is up to the specification that we require. You can download the equipment list from the World Cruising Club website. If you go to any of the rally pages and then click on safety, there's also helpful advice in preparing a boat on the safety page. In your rally handbook, once you're a participant in a rally, you can access the rally handbook electronically via the World Cruising Club members area. Click on the rally logo for the rally you're taking part once you've logged into the website. The equipment list is also available in the safety information pack section of the rally information brochure. These are the PDF information packs that are sent out when you inquire via our website about a particular rally. So if you check the email the website sent you, you'll see there's a link to the information pack. Then go to the What Do I Need section and you can download the equipment list there. Roger, any thoughts or comments about the safety equipment before we get into more detailed checks?
Well, the purpose of, although we'll be focusing on the ARC, the principles remain the same for all the rallies, whether it's just to the Channel Islands or you're sailing around the world. The key point to remember, it's not just the list to be ordered from the chandlery, but guidelines to improve and to make sure your adventure is safer and more enjoyable. And it's an opportunity to encourage all your crew to fully participate so they understand and can operate all the safety equipment on board.
The safety equipment requirements are in 2 sections. Part 1 is mandatory equipment and part 2 is recommendations. Roger, can you just explain the difference between the 2 parts?
Yes, section 1 is the compulsory part. That simply means you must have the equipment or you won't be allowed to participate. Section 2, this is a recommended list with some excellent suggestions, but each boat's requirements will be very different depending on type, size, number of crew. And it's definitely not meant to be a definitive list, but a baseline to start a discussion with your crew.
To guide you through the equipment requirements, we thought it would be easier to talk it through from the perspective of doing a boat check as we do before the start of every rally. This should make it more relevant for skippers than just a simple checklist. There is a checklist in the rally handbook and you'll find it useful to go through this. Roger, can you start by describing the process of the inspections that we do before each rally?
Yes, on the day of the safety inspection, you will have been allocated a time slot. When the inspector arrives, they will have a checklist covering the mandatory equipment. It will already be partially completed if the details that you filled in online already, such as your life raft, insurance, EPIRB numbers, etc. And then this just can be a tick chest. It's also very helpful if all the paperwork is ready. It can also be beneficial if the safety equipment can be neatly laid out, or to have crew members to demonstrate where necessary, such as how to launch the life raft. I see my principal role here during this inspection. It's not just to tick the boxes, but to offer suggestions and to discuss how you can make your voyage safer and, again, of course, more fun and enjoyable.
So Roger, once on board, where do you begin your check?
Once I've been invited on board, the inspection is often broken down into two parts. The first part is a walk around the deck, followed by a tour below decks. The walk along the deck is probably the most rewarding, as quite frequently we can spot where sails might be chafing, or if a gooseneck is badly worn, or any other points that might need a look at. We might even advise that a rig check might be advisable.
I know one of the first items that you look at when you're on board are the lifelines and the jack stays. Can you just explain what these are for and where they're located?
Yeah, lifelines are designed to keep you on board and mark the edges of the boat, similar to a fence. They need to be in good condition and all the way around the boat. They vary from very robust stainless steel tubing to the use of Dyneema, where weight may be of more concern. Any fastenings or split pins need to be checked on a regular basis, as they have a habit of becoming loose or breaking. And again, these are often taped to avoid choke. Jack stays, on the other hand, are generally made of a high-grade webbing, in preference to wire which can roll under your foot, although Dyneema is becoming more popular. Traditionally, these were laid down each side of the deck, but you might have to consider alternatives or additions if you have a very beamy cockpit or a multi-hull. Apart from the condition, it will need to be shown that any part of the vessel can be reached, which might be visited in adverse weather. For instance, can you reach the helm from the companionway? Can you reach the base of the mast, the forestay, or in a multi-hull, will it prevent you falling over the bow?
Can you give any advice for caring for jack stays? Because obviously they're lying on deck in all weather.
Yes, one point is to consider removing them in the harbour, as they can suffer from UV degradation, and also they collect dirt and can stain your teak decks. But the main thing is, if they are secured with shackles, is to mouse them, to tie them so they can't come undone if you refit them.
To enhance the visibility of a yacht on a large ship's radar, all boats are required to have a radar reflector. Roger, what are we looking for in the specification of a radar reflector?
We're looking for the biggest one possible. That's with a minimum of 10 square meters reflective ability. The ones that are most commonly used are the ones that look a bit like a boat's fender, the Echo Max or the Ferdel Blipper. These are quite good. What's not acceptable is the very small tubular ones or the tiny octagonal ones.
What about active radar reflectors? They're very good, aren't they?
Active radar reflectors are absolutely brilliant, but they rely on you having ship's power. And unfortunately, if you have total power failure, then that's where you require a passive radar reflector, because the ability to be seen is critical.
Are there any types you'd recommend as a backup for someone with an active reflector?
If you've got an active reflector or perhaps a racing yacht, then you might not want to have one permanently mounted. So the inflatable Echo Max is a very good substitute, as long as it can be readily hoisted quickly.
Each boat must have navigation lights fitted so that the yacht complies with coal regs. These are the international regulations for preventing collision at sea. The requirement is for 2 sets of navigation lights, Roger, can you expand a little bit on what this actually means for a boat skipper?
The two sets of navigation lights that are required means that they must be individually wired and run off the ship's power supply. So on most boats, you will have the lower lights, a bow light, a red and a green, and a stern light. And your second one would be a tricolour at the top of the mast, obviously dependent on the size of your vessel.
So if boats are bigger than 20 metres, they can't use a tricolour, is that right?
That's correct. Boats over 20 metres have to have be a little bit more, or show a little bit more imagination, and they will have to rig a set of lights that is powered from the ship's power supply. But this can be on a fly lead, and it's very easily set up.
For boats that don't have a tricolour, is it possible to fit one?
On some boats, it's possible to fit one. Most will be fitted with an anchor light, but the wiring needs to be checked before you replace it with a tricolour light stroke anchor light. But there are options available now.
What about LED lights? Are these recommended for navigation lights?
LED lights are highly recommended, and certainly when you come to replace your traditional lights, I would use them. They're generally brighter than conventional lanterns, use less power, and are sealed. One point to remember with all lights is not to obstruct particularly your stern light, as that you may have a dinghy fitted or the life raft has been moved to the back.
Battery-powered lights, do we accept those as an alternative?
Battery-powered lights are unacceptable because you need to have lights for at least 12 hours continuous, which is what happens in the tropic, because you have 12 hours of light and 12 hours of dark.
We know that steering failures are one of the most common problems at sea whilst on passage. So Roger, how do you approach this during the inspections?
On the inspection, you must be able to demonstrate that the emergency tiller fits properly and is functional. And you have to take off often a cap before it will be fitted. And often we discuss how your comfort might be improved by adding extensions or additional linkages.
What about some modern boats that have a twin wheel and twin rudder configuration? Do they need an emergency tiller?
They won't need an emergency tiller as long as they can prove and demonstrate that one of their rudders can be completely disconnected and the other one is fully operational.
I know as well there are some methods of having an auxiliary rudder, some wind steering systems. Have you got any comments on those?
Yes, an alternative secondary steering system I would highly recommend, because so far we just talked about linkages, but if your rudder totally drops off, an alternative steering device such as a hydrophane may be very useful. Or you might consider steering with a drogue or something along those lines.
It's definitely a good idea to practice this before you do your ocean passage, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's obviously you're not going to take your rudder off to practice it for total rudder failure, but you should certainly practice with your emergency tiller or alternative.
Right, let's look now at the requirement for washboards. Can you just explain a little bit more about this part of the requirements?
Yes, washboards or hatches need to be able to be permanently closed in case of adverse weather. If you've got doors, that's no problem, you can close them. But if you've got hatches or washboards that are detachable, they also need to be secured to the boat. So if they fall out, they don't get washed away.
Also in the cockpit, we're looking for a manual bilge pump. I know this sometimes causes confusion. Can you explain, talk us through this requirement?
Yes, a manual bilge pump that's operated from the cockpit is essential, because whatever other bilge pumps you might have, they're probably below decks and rely on some sort of power. So this is a last ditch effect.
So why do people need to be on deck for their bilge pump?
Well, if the boat is sinking and you're about to depart to the life raft or be rescued, then that is the safest place to be. You would not want to be below decks.
Of course, there could be a fire below as well, couldn't there?
There certainly could. And again, being on deck is undoubtedly the best place to be.
Some centre cockpit boats don't have a manual pump fitted as standard. What advice would you give to owners of this type of boat?
Then you need to create an emergency pump, and this might be mounted to a washboard. It's got to be robust, so it can be fitted in place, and it actually looks quite good as well. But a portable pump would also be sufficient as long as it can be securely mounted for operation.
So this is intended as a backup pump, not as the one you'd use every day.
It's an emergency pump and would only be used in such case. So again, stored in a cockpit locker might be the correct place for it.
Let's talk now about the requirement for crew overboard equipment. Obviously, having a crew overboard is every sailor's worst nightmare. And at World Cruising, we want to be sure that crews are prepared if the worst does happen. The requirement is for 2 items of crew overboard equipment. And on the graphic, you can see we've split it into 2 different boxes. So you'll need to select an item from one of each of the boxes. Roger, can you just explain what the difference is between the 2 groups?
Yes, I'll start off with section 1. And at the top of section 1 there, can either have a life ring, and this will have the name of the vessel, reflective tape, whistle, self-igniting light in a drogue to stop it blowing away. Or you can have a life sling, which is attached to the boat, but it will still require the name of the vessel, reflective tape, whistle. But as I say, because it's attached to the boat, it doesn't need a drogue.
And then in section 2, we've got a difference again, haven't we?
Yes, section 2 is a subtle difference here. Again, the top picture, this is a more traditional life ring, but in this case, it's attached to a dam buoy. That's a pole with a flag on the top. That dam buoy can be inflatable as long as you've got all the certification and the paperwork that goes with it.
What's the purpose of the dam buoy?
The dam buoy means that it can be seen from much further afield. It gives height. Obviously, a head bobbing in the water is not very visible, but a flag with a light on the top can be seen at a much greater distance.
So the items in group 2 are intended for marking the casualty in the water?
They are, yes. And if you look at the second device, an MOB module, this is like your own personal life raft with all the bells and whistles you can imagine on it. Names, reflective lights, drogues, perhaps AIS as well. So a very useful piece of equipment, but of course, all of these are reliant on you being conscious.
So if you have an MOB module, you don't need to have a dam buoy. It replaces the pole and the flag.
This is true because your MOB module contains the dam buoy in itself. What is not acceptable is just an inflatable dam buoy that you cling to. One further point is one of your devices must have permanent buoyancy, and that in case of inflatable devices are notoriously unreliable.
And some of these items require servicing, don't they?
Yes, all the inflatable devices require servicing, and you should follow the manufacturer's recommendation, and they will issue the appropriate certificates, and they need to be in date for the duration of the rally.
So in summary, you need 1 item from section 1 and 1 item from section 2. So section 1 is to aid recovery and section 2 is to aid target marking. It's worth remembering that this graphic is also available in the Rally Handbook, and we're happy to answer questions if you're unsure about your own specific equipment. I know that during the inspection you'll be looking for some additional items positioned close to the helm. What are these, Roger?
Probably one of the most important things is a dedicated throwing line. It's a very underestimated and useful piece of equipment because it can also be used as a heaving line when you get close to the dock. The other things we'll be looking for are dedicated boat knives, and again, where they're located will be dependent on your yacht, maybe next to the kicking strap, maybe close to a life raft. These should have day glow handles and preferably a serrated edge.
With the throwing line, can any old bit of rope do?
It's got to be a floating line, and it's got to be a minimum of 15 meters in length. That's 50 feet.
So it'll go a good distance.
Yes, with a bit of practice, you can get tremendous accuracy.
We've got a requirement for a high-powered searchlight. Can you just explain what this is used for and why we insist on a non-battery type?
Yes, it's normally used for search and rescue, and it's got to be operated from the ship's power supply. This is because we wouldn't want the batteries to go flat on your light, as you have 12 hours of darkness in the tropics. Most people use LED lights these days because they're more powerful, but you need to check that when they're being recharged, that they actually work, and this will be done during the inspection. You might also consider having to extend the lead so you can move it around the boat or add additional sockets in the cockpits.
That's the end of this chapter of our safety equipment review. I'd like to finish with just a reminder of how you can get the equipment list. It's available on our website. If you go to worldcruising.com, then click the link to safety from any of the rally pages. If you are doing a rally, you can also read this in the rally handbook. You'll have been sent a hard copy as the skipper of the boat, or you can log into the members area at worldcruising.com and you can access the electronic version of the rally handbook. There's a full and detailed section on safety in there. To get into the members area, if you go to worldcruising.com, then click the log on button and then click on the logo for the rally you're doing. For those of you that are inquiring about taking part in a rally and maybe watching this video, in the information pack you were sent at time of inquiry, the PDF file about the rally you've inquired about, if you click on the What Do I Need section, that takes you to the full list of equipment requirements. If you haven't actually inquired for the rally, then please do at worldcruising.com, and the website will send you the relevant rally information pack. Thank you for listening.